Thinking about taking your professional exams and wondering, is it worth it? And how am I going to study for them? I am Sue Taylor, and you're listening to a Sitting with Sue podcast. And I'm delighted to have sitting with me Chris Boggis and Ashley Martin from Woodgate Clark, both of whom have been there, seen it, and done it. Or in Ashley's case, he's still actually doing it. So let's start off by finding out who you are and where you are on your journey. So Chris, you go first, and then Ashley, you tell us about yourself as well.
So I am Chris Boggis. I was a loss adjuster, now client relationship manager for Woodgate Clark. I've been through the CII and SILA routes, and it's actually myself that is in the process of finalising my associate for SILA at the moment.
Hello there, I'm Ashley Martin and I work as a field loss adjuster for Woodgate and Clark, dealing with a variety of claims for a number of different insurers. Prior to this, I worked for an insurance broker dealing with desktop claims for removal, storage and self-storage. And I've also completed my ACII and I have recently completed my MSILA.
So here we go. My first question is therefore, why did you take the exams and why were they important to you? Chris, you go first.
So I was the same as a lot of people. When I first started, I had a certain mentor, and I know you've talked about mentors before on your podcast and the importance of them. I had somebody that said to me, get your CII done, was the first one. What's the CII? Didn't know what it was. And so learned a bit about it and I was pushed into it, frankly. But the more I got to grips with the qualifications, the more I realised that actually, I wouldn't say there's one single thing you can do if you want a career in insurance or loss adjusting that's more important. I think they are enjoyable, although there is a lot of work involved in getting them. They are enjoyable. They also make your role itself more enjoyable. They give you a much deeper understanding of the fundamental pillars of what we do and why we do it. And frankly, they can make it easier to deal with challenging situations as well. I think a lot of loss adjusters that have been through this process would say the same. I mean, what about yourself, Ashley?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, for me, it started at my previous company where the managing director was very encouraging to do the qualifications. Start with the CII and then progress to the SILA as well, because given I'm in a claims role, it's very much relevant, to do both qualifications from both professional bodies. And I think as well, it just sort of makes you stand out more, to be honest, and differentiates yourself, given that we have a dwindling number of qualifying loss adjusters now in the UK. It makes it even more important to maintain that professional standard, which we can show to insurers, brokers, and other customers and stakeholders to show we have that sort of symbol of trust, if you like, that we know hopefully what we're doing.
Hopefully.
Excellent. And just to add in that I actually ended up doing my SILA exams because I had too many glasses of red wine, but that's a story for another day. But I was persuaded by two very well-known loss adjusters to take them, and I don't regret it. I really actually enjoy doing them. So for the two of you, though, has having the exams opened any doors for you?
I think for me, absolutely. I'm somebody that's always been quite, at times quite focused, quite driven, but I haven't necessarily known the right steps to take. And as you say, the right doors to open or how to open them. And I look at the framework from apprenticeships that we see, that we bring across a lot to general professional development as being critical. So for those that aren't familiar, you've got three key pillars of what they term essentially a rounded professional: knowledge, skills, and behaviours. There's a reason knowledge is first. If you don't have the requisite knowledge, you will struggle to advance in no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing within this industry. Without that knowledge, you are going to struggle to stand on 2 feet. And the best way of getting the knowledge is the professional qualification study. You can pick up some through learning from colleagues and listening to conversations and similar, but frankly, you don't get this level of depth of understanding without the qualifications and without doing them yourself. You can only bleed so much from colleagues. Absolutely. From actually studying the qualifications, yes, I feel like it's opened doors for me. It's made it easier for me to interact with people on almost a higher level. But then through the context that you get with being familiar with Scylla, and especially if you start looking at volunteering, which anybody that's met me on the CII circles now, I get heavily involved in that stuff, but also I'm beginning to with Scylla as well. The networking opportunities that gives you, the different skills that you just won't get working in an office environment or at home as an adjuster. The pathways that you get from it really do open doors. And I would stake everything I own on the fact that I wouldn't be in this role now without having gone through this process. There's absolutely no way.
That's a bit dodgy. But Ashley, would you stake everything you own as well?
Well, it depends what was on offer. No, I think Chris is completely right, to be fair. And with the qualification, when you go to customers, for example, and you're on site visits, often customers will ask, oh, what are these qualifications? So then you spend 5-10 minutes, well, a few minutes perhaps, depending on how interested they are, discussing the qualifications and what each one means. So I think people do, and by people, I mean the general public, they do, some certainly take a real interest in the qualifications and what they mean in relation to the job and the site visit you're undertaking. I mean, just to give an example from my point of view about opening doors, I was working as a desk adjuster prior to Woodgate Clark. And, having the qualification really helped to secure a role at Woodgate. And I think without them, I may not be working here now, because it just adds that extra string to your bow. And it makes it worth for someone or an employer to give you a chance and develop your practical experience alongside the qualifications.
And from what you're saying, you get a respect from the general public. You hand over your business card and they look at your qualifications and think, yes, I'm dealing here with somebody who's actually studied as well as got the practice as well.
Yes, indeed. I mean, that really does help, particularly if you've got a difficult claim, a challenging claim. That really makes a big difference. You're out there, you're in the customer's home or business or whatever it may be. And it really does help. You would never regret doing the exams. That's really the way I'd look at it.
But I mean, obviously you're juggling the day job and you're trying to study. So have you got any tips as to actually how to survive the process?
So for me, I've seen both sides of it. And when I say both sides, I mean, I started my qualification journey when I was unencumbered by children. We'll put it that way, because they are an encumbrance, because they're an additional thing to juggle within your day. And I think that's one of the things that some parents may perhaps feel put off by the idea of doing this. I did my certificates and diplomas before I was a parent, and yes, they were challenging, but it was easier to put the time together. I think the area I'd like to focus on is the latter part. So I was doing high level qualifications with young children, but I've managed to do it, and I'm not Mr. Motivator. I am not Mr. I get absolutely everything done. These stories that you see on LinkedIn of people where they manage to fit everything into an impossible schedule, that's not me. But what I've managed to do is to break things down. And I think that's key for anybody. It looks like a really quite challenging, daunting qualification to take on, but it's in bite-sized chunks. There are elements that really, as long as you have some form of organisation to your day, and often you can receive study support as well from your employer if they're amenable, which most are. The key thing I found, it was just breaking that day down and recognising what it's going to give me as well. That's something I've always kept in mind when going through this process.
How are you doing?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I've got a couple of tips I would recommend. I mean, Chris, I completely agree with regards to breaking it down into chunks. Because if you look at it from an overview, you think, geez, it's quite, it's rather daunting. So I think really the top tips would be, I mean, for me, I did it before work. So you spend an hour and a half over breakfast doing it before the day starts, because you've got no phone calls, no interruptions, and it's a good time to work. But obviously, if someone prefers to work in the evening, then naturally the same applies. So that's the key thing, to get it, to sort of do an hour and a half, as often as you can. And then I think secondly as well is, once you've completed one unit or one module, to then not have too big a gap in between them, because otherwise I find that you lose the momentum. So you really want to be not overwhelming yourself, by the way, but you really want to be cracking on whilst you've got that momentum and that headwind, so to speak, to get through as many as you can. And then I find as well, the more units you complete, the more modules you complete, etc., the more motivation you feel, because obviously you're making good progress and you're ticking down the number to go.
And I mean, the exams these days are meant to build on each other. So again, that's the really good tip about not taking too big a gap between them, because you want to be able to build on that knowledge and retain that knowledge rather than have to start from scratch again. But I mean, do you think that any barriers have been put in your way at all? Or do you feel your company has invested in your exam process? I mean, what's the general feeling? Chris, again, you go first.
Certainly for myself, the company absolutely has. So we have dedicated study time that we can take, but also I was provided some expert advice by an excellent trainer that was organised by our company. I won't name them. It might have been sounded like Sue Naylor. Could have been, but no, but that's I think, and I think there are a lot of business out there that will invest the time in people. And certainly there has to be a bit of give and take with things. There's a bit of reality at times, but as long as there's commitment shown by the individual to the professional development, generally most employers in the insurance market would be supportive of professional qualification study. I think others have found barriers, and you do hear stories in other areas of the industry where it can be a struggle. All I can say for people in those situations is anything that a business does comes with what you call a cost benefit analysis. Show them that you're worth doing the qualification and you will invariably get the support.
So it's a two-way process then. You invest in
Exactly.
yourself and they invest in you. So it's a 50-50 to get a win-win.
Precisely so. I mean, yes, everybody is going to want to advance, but equally, a business would only invest in somebody if they think it's going to be worthwhile for them as well. If we're expecting the level of support, then I would expect the employee to also put in the required effort and show that it is a worthwhile endeavour.
And Ashley, do you agree with Chris, or you're going to have a fight?
Well, I mean, I suppose I've come out of it. Yeah, when I first joined the brokerage about 7, 8 years ago, that was a company of 40 people tops. And often you hear that small companies don't always pay for the qualifications because they simply don't have the budgets available like the large insurers, large brokers, or large adjusting firms. But to be fair, the firm that I worked for, they paid for them. They paid for everyone to do the qualifications, right up to ACII and, well, even SCII. All the employee needed to do was show commitment and show willing and interest. And therefore, they would be funded completely for the qualifications or the coursework, and also the study materials such as the guides, any external training delivered by trainers, etc. So really, I personally haven't come across any firms that don't pay for it. So I'd say that probably is very much a minority. And if they were paying for it, it would probably be because of a lack of budget with regards to learning development.
There's one thing I have found, actually. I have seen cases where, certainly in smaller businesses, there hasn't been the level of support available. There might be an appetite to provide funding for the qualifications, but some people need extra support when actually going through the process. So the sort of thing we talked about with Sue there, do not forget, if you don't have the level of support within your business because they're small or they're perhaps not as invested as some, there are other resources for yourself. So have a look at the CILA website, have a look at the CII website, depending on which qualification you're looking at doing. There are resources out there. Don't forget CII local institutes as well. They can put you in touch with people that could really help you. There are options out there. You just need to explore them.
If you're not listening to this in the UK, don't worry, because that applies externally as well. And I have to say, I've trained a huge number of people who are not in the UK, and you don't physically have to see them. It is an all remote process. But Ashley, you were going to say something and I rudely interrupted you.
No. I'm just going to, I did follow up on Chris's point about the CII and the CILA as well. If the company doesn't fund qualifications for whatever reason, there are opportunities to learn and develop with the CII, for example, and the CILA in terms of fast track programs to help you get to that stage, help you achieve your DIP or advanced DIP, etc. So it's certainly worth looking outside of your firm for extra support should you need it.
And it's worth saying as well, actually, whilst we're here, and you talked about barriers. So one of the things that I think some people can be afraid of is repayment terms. So we talked about commitment, and yes, absolutely, that should be there, but it might well be that what's best for your career within a period of time of qualifying is to consider other options. which can happen, I have repaid almost all of my professional qualification study for my earlier qualifications because I moved. So I completed 2 certificates and a diploma within 12 months and ended up having to repay all of that cost to the employer at the time because the terms weren't all that favourable for me. But I don't begrudge that at all. I think the move I made was the right one at the time. I think my career has moved in the direction I wanted it to as a result of making that decision. Yes, it was a cost to me, but it's worked out getting the qualifications anyway, and I would never regret it. But the one thing I do regret is not speaking to my new employer about it because, again, it can be a conversation piece. These qualifications are well sought after. If you show your capability, it's always worth having a conversation with employers because it might well be that there's something they can do about it. If the cost of doing the qualifications yourself, or indeed leaving a business to have to repay it, is a blocker for you, have conversations because it might well be there's something that can be done about it.
So it's almost sort of like a student loan.
Yeah,
Right.
similar. Yeah.
Something along those lines. So yes, don't shy away from it. Invest in yourself and ask the companies to invest in you as well. Do the double benefits. Have either of you got any more comments? Because that's been a very good conversation.
I think the one thing I'd finish on is that sometimes, well, quite often companies will incentivize employees to complete the qualifications by offering cash bonuses after every qualification completed. That's certainly not unheard of. And if that's the icing on the cake or the cherry on top, then, why not? And if that encourages more people to take the qualifications and results in more qualified loss adjusters, that's only a good thing for the industry as a whole.
Completely agree with that. And for me, I don't think I've got it across quite strongly enough just how important I think this is, how enjoyable I think the qualifications are. Yes, they work and they do take effort, but what you get back from it is incredible. For me, if you care about the industry, if you want to have a rewarding career within this industry, I can't fathom how you wouldn't want to do these qualifications, unless it is just you're thinking, oh, it looks like a lot of effort. Break it down, take your time, get support. And even if you don't think you're a studious person, I think there are resources there to make this more than achievable for anybody. And yeah, get it done. Get the qualifications. I just don't understand why you wouldn't.
So in summary, then take the exams. They really are important to you, and you might have a bit of fun in the process of doing them. They will impact you from the point of view you're going to have to do a bit of juggling, but it's absolutely perfectly possible. Just work out a plan. And both you as the individual and the companies need to invest in those qualifications so that you get the best outcomes for everybody. So I think I've summarised that more or less. You've been listening to a Sitting with Sue Insurance Questions Answered podcast, and I hope you found it informative. I have. Check out my website at www.suetaylor.co.uk for other podcasts available, including my Exam Hints and Tips, which is a Sue and Ted podcast. And you can always subscribe to learn about new ones in the pipeline.